Hi, I'm Steve Clemons, and I have a question. With Israel's tightening restrictions on food and medicine reaching Gaza, is the much celebrated U.S. ceasefire plan in real jeopardy? Let's get to the bottom line. The White House has been dispatching top officials to Israel to keep the Gaza deal alive. First, it was U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, and in quick succession followed Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The delegations included the head of the U.S. Military Central Command, Admiral Brad Cooper, and of course Trump's deal-making envoy, Steve Witkoff, and also Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Although the ceasefire has generally held with some major violations, Israel was holding up the entry of most food and medical supplies, which is a key commitment of this agreement. And if no progress is made, will this Trump deal collapse? Today, we're talking with Chris Hedges, the former Middle East bureau chief of the New York Times, and he's author of several books, including Empire of Illusion, The End of Literacy, and The Triumph of Spectacle. Chris, it's a real honor to have you on the show today. You've seen a lot of peace deals between Israel and the Palestinians come and go. How does this new one that Donald Trump is taking a lot of credit for, how does this one rank to you?
The least serious of all of them. All of these peace deals going back to Camp David are written in exactly the same formula. And those are phases. So in the first phase, Israel gets what it wants. In the case of Camp David, that was recognition by Egypt, the normalization of relations. The Palestinians were not involved in Camp David. And then you had the Oslo Accords with its timetables of eventual Israeli withdrawal, handing over control to the Palestinian Authority. These were usually done in 5-year increments, or there were various timeframes. Israel never implemented the subsequent phases. That is true in every ceasefire agreement, including the ones that were signed or negotiated during the genocide. This one doesn't even have, except for the 72 hours whereby once Israel stopped its attacks, the hostages had to be released. There's actually no time frame at all. It doesn't recognize Palestinian sovereignty. Israel has the right to control the borders. Israel is the entity that will determine if Hamas or the Palestinians break the ceasefire. And I don't know at this point how anyone can feel that Israel would make those judgments in good faith. And then, of course, not surprisingly, almost immediately after the ceasefire was put into place, Israel began to violate it, refusing to let in the 600 trucks a day, eventually cutting off aid completely, carrying out all sorts of airstrikes and provocations. So I was a little stunned that anyone took this document, which was obviously very hastily written, with any seriousness at all.
Do we run a mistake of not looking at the fact that this president, Donald Trump, is different than Biden was and others for this in terms of getting Netanyahu to at least momentarily do something different than he did? I'm just interested in whether you see any positive sprouts at all.
Well, I mean, of course, it's positive that saturation bombing is not being carried out over Gaza and that some aid is getting in, not anywhere near enough, of course. So, yes, those are positives. But whether this will actually thwart the genocidal project that Israel is intending to carry out in Gaza, and many people would argue the West Bank, I don't see it.
So one of the other features of this right now is, you're right, almost immediately, within days, you had both sides saying the other had violated the deals, and particularly over the returns of the remains of deceased held hostages that had been held before. And President Trump came out and said, and now Vice President J.D. Vance, you've got to be patient. I mean, these people are buried under rubble, they're around, it's going to take time. And you've got the President of the United States and the Vice President of the United States seeming to actually be constraining Israel on this side, which is something we're not really used to seeing. How seriously do you take that?
Well, but at the same time, Trump has green-lighted the Israelis for going in and finishing off Hamas if Hamas does not disband and disarm. So you're right. I mean, of course, and everyone knew that from the beginning. The Gaza is just a moonscape of rubble. And let's be clear, many of those, I would guess the majority of the Israeli hostages who were killed were probably killed by Israeli bombs, along probably with their guards. And so everyone knew that locating those bodies would be extremely difficult. There are probably tens of thousands of Palestinian bodies that Palestinian families can't locate. So that was always understood. And Israel, of course, seized on that issue, and they will seize on other issues, including their decision that Hamas, true or untrue, has not been disarmed, to justify strikes. Well, a clear violation of the ceasefire. I mean, large numbers of dead. I don't know what the final count now is, but I think it's about 170 or 200. So, yeah, I don't think that Trump wants to see the ceasefire unravel quickly, yet at the same time, he has given his endorsement to Israel to go into Gaza to attack Hamas if Israel deems that necessary.
What we haven't seen before is the inclusion of countries like Turkey and Indonesia, where the United States is kind of giving up the monopoly of its control over these things, bringing them in. And in a way, I sort of look at that as a positive stakeholding, because I've been wondering, where are Arab leaders, where are other states in this equation? So while I understand what you're saying about the cynicism about this peace deal, do we see a new rearrangement of stakeholders potentially down the road in something, or is that an illusion as well?
Well, you're right about them being brought in, but they're brought in as vassals. They're brought in under the rubric of U.S. and Israeli control, although Netanyahu, of course, was not in Cairo. They're not directing the effort. And frankly, that gets into the failure on the part of, I would say, many Arab countries to be more aggressive, with maybe the exception of Yemen, more aggressive about halting the genocide. And the whole notion that they are going to appoint a viceroy in the form of Tony Blair, I mean, is just almost risible. Not only is Tony Blair politically a creation of the Zionist lobby, Ilan Pappé documents that in his new book, but he is one of the perpetrators of the debacle in Iraq. So you're right about the participation, but they're not joining this effort as equal partners.
Another thing that's really interesting, there's an extraordinary interview of Time magazine with President Trump that's just come out. The Israeli parliament has voted to move forward the annexation of the West Bank. It's a very, very big moment, when this is out there. At the same time, this deal is predicated on that not moving forward. And there's a question from that was made to him about this, about President Trump not allowing Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu to annex the West Bank. And Trump, says, I'm going to read this. It won't happen. It won't happen. It won't happen because I gave my word to the Arab countries. And you can't do that now. We've had great Arab support. It won't happen because I gave my word to the Arab countries. It will not happen. Israel would lose all of its support from the United States if that happened. In addition, Vice President Vance said, he basically said, I take some insult to the vote over what happened, saying that Israel is not going to annex the West Bank. I'd love to get your take on this, because it's not often you see a direct train wreck between what Israel has done at the exact moment you have a peace deal that everyone wanted. So that promised there will be no annexation. So what's your take on that dance?
Well, that's why Netanyahu's office denounced the vote in the Knesset. There is a de facto annexation of the West Bank. Since October 7th, Israel has seized tremendous tracts of land, especially in the Jordan Valley. It has handed out over 10,000 automatic weapons to Jewish colonists who have formed rogue militias that are daily terrorizing and killing Palestinian people. This is the olive harvest. They are going in and beating Palestinians as they attempt to harvest their olives. So Israel now controls 80% of the West Bank. And what they have done is essentially surround areas like, For instance, Ramallah, kind of Bantustan's, they control, of course, all the traffic, all the roads. So the formal move, you're right, to annex the West Bank is, on the one hand, condemned by the Trump administration and even, of course, by Netanyahu's office. Yet, on the other hand, that slow motion annexation is taking place. And let's not forget that since October 7th, the uptick of violence, the use of aircraft to attack the Jenin refugee camp, much of which has been destroyed. The moves have been such to essentially carry out annexation in all but name.
We know that Israel is also now arming its own militias to arm and deal with Hamas. Now, this is before we get to the so-called International Stabilization Force, which is the dream force of these different forces to come in. To me, it sounds like cooking up a new civil war. What does it sound like to you?
Yeah, well, that is what Israel essentially attempted to foment by arming clans or gangs. Many of these are smuggling gangs, criminal gangs, as a counterweight to Hamas. Once the ceasefire took place, these gangs did not have the military umbrella provided by Israel. That's why the mercenaries and thugs from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation fled Gaza as fast as they could because of the fear of retribution. I think the final tally of Palestinian dead, these were at these 4 purported aid sites. They were never designed to provide adequate amounts of food. They were designed to lure or bait Palestinians, malnourished and starving Palestinians, from the north down to the south, where they were not allowed to go back and held in concentration camps. Those guys left Gaza, as fast as they could get through the border crossing. So, and then you're seeing, of course, the expected retribution carried out by Hamas to regain control. But the force that, and your civil war is certainly what Israel wanted to foment. But that was an Israeli project, and it doesn't defend it, but this is a Hamas reaction.
Well, a key part of this agreement down the road in later phases is the disarming of Hamas, the disarming of these groups. It doesn't sound like these conditions are going to yield that outcome.
Well, also, Hamas did not agree to disarming. What they did is essentially greenlight the first phase and then leave all the actual difficult proposals for a later stage. This is typical, many of which, if past agreements are any indication, will never come to fruition.
Let me ask you a darker question, which is, what does the future look like to you, given what you've asserted is Israel's intention, which is no matter what the deal is, no matter what the pause is, no matter what the pressure is, it's essentially to depopulate, to essentially engage in genocide, but depopulate that area, to move those people away or to kill them. I'm interested in whether you see, and I'm going to put this carefully, how you see that and how you would see what would be required for an alternative path from that very, very bleak future that you've spoken so powerfully about.
Well, first of all, that's not my supposition. That has been stated by innumerable Israeli leaders and cabinet members, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, even Netanyahu himself, since October 7th. The sticking point is the Israelis have not found a country. They put heavy pressure on Egypt, of course, to take the Palestinians. They've negotiated with other countries, Somaliland, Somalia, Sudan. That apparently has not worked. So we know what the intent is. And in the meantime, we will get more of the same. What is that? Gaza is barely inhabitable. There's no clean water. There's a distinct lack of food. There's virtually no medical facilities. The 90% of Gaza has been destroyed. People are camped out next to toxic pools of raw sewage. These buildings are filled with toxins, not only unexploded ordnance, asbestos, and of course, bodies, decomposing bodies in the rubble. And I think Israel is going to do what it is doing, which is make Gaza a living hell until they are able to find a mechanism by which they can remove the Palestinians. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that's clearly the intent. And the United States, which is probably the one entity that has the ability to halt it, has not halted the arms shipments. At this point, Israel is totally reliant on munitions from the U.S. It ran out of its own stockpiles months ago. And so, as Francesca Albanese points out, the only two ways that this is going to stop is, one, halting the arms to Israel, the weapon shipments, or creating a kind of naval task force of countries like Spain and Turkey and everywhere else to essentially break the humanitarian blockade. That is what I saw in northern Iraq. I was there when Saddam Hussein went after the Kurds. They imposed a no-fly zone, and Iraqi forces had to withdraw to the 38th parallel. That's the kind of mechanism that would work if the will within the international community was there, but unfortunately, it is not.
In this Time magazine article, he's asked about disarming Hamas, but he has very interesting comments about Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. He says, and I said to Bibi, you can't fight the world. You can fight individual battles, but the world's against you. And Israel is a very small place compared to the world. He says, I stopped him because he would have just kept going. It could have gone on for years. It would have gone on for years. And I stopped him, and everybody came together when I stopped. It was amazing. And when he made that one tactical mistake, the one on Qatar, and that was terrible, but actually, and I actually told the Emir, this was one of the things that brought us all together because it was so out of joint that it sort of got everybody to do what they have to do. I'm just wondering whether you get in the sense here, if Netanyahu really ticked off Trump, might there not be a choking of some of those armaments?
Well, that's a good question. Trump did go to the Knesset and laud Miriam Edelman, who the widow of Sheldon Adelson, who gave his campaign $100 million and talked about how they probably visited the Oval Office in his first term more than anyone else. The power of the Israel lobby, although diminished, still remains quite potent within the United States. Trump himself, by the way, is, he's impulsive, he's unfocused. He promised to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. That hasn't gone very well for him. Yes, I think the strike on Qatar was extremely significant. And I think it was a kind of, I think for the rest of the Arab world, it was a realization that no one will stop the hand of Israel, including carrying out an unprovoked attack on a sovereign state. We've seen the expansion of Greater Israel into Lebanon. The Israeli forces are almost all the way up to Damascus. They would, of course, intend to expand into Gaza and the West Bank. And that was a kind of seismic moment, I think, for many people in the realization that this demented dream of Israeli hegemony throughout the region is very, very real. Will we get to a point? I mean, Trump has not halted the arms shipments. Biden actually restricted some. And then I would just throw it in. Nobody likes Bibi. Netanyahu, Obama loathed him. Biden didn't like him. I mean, he's a very hard person to like.
Let me show you something else that's going on in the United States right now. I have to say, most Americans do not come with the detail and the awareness that you have. So they're looking at, bigger waves in all of this. But if you look at polls, number one, Trump's the sense of Trump's competence and the support for his handling of the Middle East has surged upward, number one. But number two, when you look at polls on should the United States recognize Palestine as a country, Americans say 59% yes, and no 33%. But here's what's really interesting to me, is of that, Republicans 41% believe that, Democrats 80%, and other is 58%, which means Republicans are really shifting significantly, more than we've seen before, about Palestine being potentially recognized as a country. Have you thought about that?
Well, that's the base. So that's different. The leadership remains, including the Democratic Party leadership, Schumer and Jeffries and others, remain stalwart supporters of Israel. And I think that you've touched on something important, and that is that the next generation, Israel's just not going to have the support across the political spectrum. And there are other interesting poll numbers, including one that says that 75% of registered Democrats want to halt arms shipments to Israel. I think ultimately what Israel has done to itself is fatal, but I think the effects of it may be some years away. But there's no going back from this genocide. The visage of the Israeli apartheid settler colonial state has been, the visage that masked that is been removed and isn't going to be put back on. And I think that the polls that you cited are illustrative of that.
Now, recently, I understand that you were invited to Australia to give a speech at the National Press Club there, that was a speech that was canceled. Can you give us any insight into what happened?
Yes, it was, it's one of the reasons I admire the work that you do, because you've been so out front and with many of your journalists, of course, being targeted and killed on the genocide. It was about the betrayal of Palestinian journalists, how the Western press amplified the lies and propaganda, the Hazara put out by Israel, beheaded babies and mass rapes and human shields and errant rockets. I mean, you know the list as well as I do. And that was just a bridge too far for the National Press Club of Australia. And so they canceled the talk. But I, as somebody who spent 7 years in the Middle East, I was the Middle East bureau chief for the New York Times. Much of that, I'm an Arabic speaker. Much of that time in Gaza, I'm acutely aware of how the constant repetition of lies pumped out by Israel. And let's be clear, certainly the journalists who are there know they're lies. We knew they were lies, have discredited the work of our very heroic colleagues in Gaza.
I hear you're working on a new book.
Yes. So I just did a book called A Genocide Foretold that tried to put the genocide in context. And then the cartoonist Joe Sacco, the author of Palestine and his masterpiece, Footnotes in Gaza, and I have been in Egypt interviewing 29 Palestinian families from Gaza, because, of course, we can't get into Gaza as reporters. And we're writing a book called Requiem for Gaza, which we finished the manuscript in December.
I look forward to seeing it. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Chris Hedges, thank you so much for your candor and for being with us today.
Thank you.
So what's the bottom line? What a difference a little bit of time can make. A few weeks ago, Trump's big, beautiful deal for Gaza looked promising. Even Democrats here in the United States applauded Donald Trump for delivering this ceasefire, which his predecessor had neither the guts nor the ambition to do. But now this deal could fall apart, or it could just stagnate. Both sides are now condemning each other for not following the agreement. My guest today recently wrote something very powerful about the long history of Israel-Palestine negotiations, including this line, and I quote, "It's a sadistic game, a merry-go-round of death. The ceasefire, like those of the past, is just a commercial break." So it would be great if time proves Chris Hedges wrong. But the cynicism about this moment is rooted in realism, given what we hear and know from so many in Israel's leadership. Humans always choose hope, but hope will only work now if the United States uses its might to move Israel in a new direction. And that's the bottom line.